Hello, I want to talk about ride sharing, a relatively common system design interview question where we are asked to design a system similar to Uber, Lyft, or others. So let's dive into it. Topics I'm gonna cover is clarifying questions and requirements, high-level components, account and verification, map service, and requesting and accepting rides. There can be more topics, but I'm gonna focus on like some of the core ones. One thing, like when coming to clarifying questions requirements, if you use the app, you probably know how it looks. So just like validate what you saw and ask questions based on that. If you haven't used it, then it's time to spend a bit more time on like clarifying what actually interviewer wants from you, and just be transparent that you haven't used it or like know little about it, and ask a lot of questions and like let the person explain like maybe some like a small prototype of like what it looks like from terms of functionality and which core functionality we need to implement. If you haven't designed such a system before, like in practice, also like be transparent about it. The interview is very short and you cannot design a system where a whole big company builds in just like 1 hour or something. So let the interviewer know where you stand, and most important is anyways how you handle like unknowns and more like open-ended problems. So for ride sharing systems, some of questions could be related to like how people match with like riders and drivers, about registration verification flows, like scale questions about how many people you expect, and in particular, what do we do during peak hours, rating system, then like how does the core algorithm works with drivers becoming available and the driver accepting the ride, how do we handle search pricing and make sure there are always enough drivers but not too many either. Do we like support things like tips? And do we also support just maybe like one rider account requesting like some ride? Or do we support also like sharing of like where like people from different accounts can like request a shared ride for a smaller price? That's a lot to cover, and that's why you need to clarify which functionality is inside the scope, which is outside of the scope, and spend maybe like 10-ish minutes on that part before you move on to high-level components design and other parts of the interview. So here I would recommend doing some focus on account flow, like registration, verification, etc. Core algorithm, of course, about how we like match riders to drivers. And another thing you can talk about is maps, for example. And we're gonna talk about which high-level components would be needed for those systems. Except maybe maps. I'm only briefly gonna cover that because maps by itself is like a pretty much a separate system design interview question. You can spend a bunch of time talking about that, and I have a video about that as well. So let's go to high-level components. So like let me walk through pieces here. One is just like a typical setup for the web app, where you have a user on some maybe application, for example, on mobile phone. They call our website endpoints. It goes through load balancer, goes through API gateway, which does authentication, authorization, maybe some rate limiting, caching, and like more stuff. And then it goes to the underlying system in the basically our backend. So, and we have like several pieces here. We have the stateless account service and verification service. We have like riders databases and driver databases. We have map services. It's by itself is pretty complex system. I'm not gonna like draw the diagram for it because it's gonna take a full slide. So then for write request service and write accept service, we also need that. It's gonna be stateless services. But then we also have like databases for write requests. We're gonna cover like which database to pick a bit later. And then accepted writes database, which just stores the history basically. And let's talk about account and verification. Registration can be done by email or phone number. Like phone number is usually better, it just gives more like confidence. So email, anybody can create an email. Databases for riders and drivers data have high durability and consistency requirements and can definitely benefit from ACID properties. So SQL database like Postgres or WS Aurora is a good choice here. Like I recommend just knowing some names, but it's not a big deal. Just like pick SQL databases you worked with. If you haven't, just like or like maybe you haven't worked directly or like not up to date, then just maybe naming something like Postgres is likely gonna be good enough. It's more important to understand why we are choosing it and which requirements are needed. Like so obviously if you register an account as a user and then it just disappears and you're not very happy and probably not coming back. Or like if your money is gone, like it's also like pretty frustrating. And yeah, we like that's just another example. We haven't talked about the money charging system, which is can be another big component in the part of the application. So that's why it's just to signify it's very important to like talk through what's in scope, what's outside of the scope for specific that like 1 hour or so that you're gonna talk with the interviewer. So going back to this is verification. It can be done, for example, by uploading ID and taking a video selfie. And the modern systems are pretty sophisticated, so they can like validate that hey, is like your face somewhat matches what's on the ID. And for drivers, maybe you wanna also do some background checks, just to be like safer. Then account and verification services are stateless and horizontally scalable, but databases are like you have to also have some replication for like fault tolerance. If changes are not frequent, we can just set up some read replicas in particular because they're cheaper. Let's talk about maps a little bit. So it's so complex that some companies may opt into just using like some other vendors maps, like Google Maps or Apple Maps or maybe open source alternative. Building maps from scratch is like a really tough task. There's so many pieces. So briefly, we would need some location service in DB, some search, we need some route service, ETA and traffic services. We need support finding by location, evaluate the route based on different like scale and zoom degrees. One advantage though, comparing to like regular map services, like you typically don't need like long routes. Maybe like from town to town is like usually the most you get. So that can be used for some optimizations in the algorithms. You would need to estimate ETA. It's mostly for drivers. Usually those apps, they later show you the route. But it's not like as critical part for the rider as it is for the driver. As traffic changes, route suggestions can also change. Visual data can be stored as images and CDN can be used to cache that, but that may be still too expensive because we have many resolutions and different levels of zoom. So vectorized representation of maps rendered in the app can be better choice. Requesting and accepting rides. So this is like basically like a fast-paced marketplace. Riders put their offers and drivers can accept from what they're given in the area. Like there are some similarities with like stock market, for example, but stock market is a bit more complex, but it's also a bit different. The prices can be dynamically adjusted to make sure there are enough drivers and available riders, but usually it's better if it's done like under the hood. So when a rider requests the ride, they already see the price. And only if they cannot find a ride within like several minutes, maybe like we can do some adjustment. Data storage should be some highly performant system and durable, but only for a short period of time. Long-term storage is not a requirement because like usually rides are either like accepted or they're like just like time out and like person is not gonna wait for like 1 hour if you design the system right. If we need data for analytics, we can also add another component like some message queue like Kafka and read from it for like various systems. And overall, for the main system, something like pub/sub can be like a good choice. So we have publishers for like riders, which are like add information to the like some special like, specific lists, and then like subscribers allow the drivers, so drivers subscribe to riders in the area. And then like for example, Redis pub/sub can be a good choice where basically maintaining subscriptions is like pretty cheap, if I recall correctly. So it all depends on actual like traffic, but overall it's pretty performant, so definitely like recommended here. For accepted rides, we may need a bit longer term and more durable storage, like say maybe you need to like also have transactions, so multiple drivers don't accept the same rider. Also there maybe need to like look at history to see like if there are any disputes or any issues with that, and so on. So if you have other topics or time for other topics, like one thing you can talk about is security. Like suppose something goes off and either like a driver like starts like acting dangerously or rider starts acting dangerously. There has to be ways for people from the app to quickly like report this and maybe even to get authorities involved. Fortunately, it usually doesn't happen that frequently, but it still could happen. So this aspect is important. Overall, I'd recommend like it's more like a general tip. Pick some area that you're familiar with more and deep dive into this. It can be like general setup of the web app. It can be if you like worked with for example, if you worked in one of those like companies, Uber or Lyft. You can talk about part of the system that you specifically focused on. So don't try to like pretend and like show the knowledge where you don't have it. And also just be transparent that hey, if you're saying that hey, I know some like generic stuff, but maybe I don't know it as in depth, and that's probably gonna be okay. Good interviewer would figure out how to like challenge you and see like how you think. Overall, yeah, try to be just transparent about what you know, what you don't know, and like system design interview is not really like a knowledge check. It's more about like you being out of comfort zone and like talking about how to set up systems and like show that you're actually like capable of doing this while doing actual work. And also don't be too like concerned if you cannot cover everything. It's like open-ended problem and it's like pretty big, and maybe hundreds of thousands of people spend time, like a lot of like months and years to design and build something like this. So of course, like within an hour you cannot do as much. All right, thanks for watching.